Today is a day in August 2024, and we are in Boston, Massachusetts. And today we're going to visit the Courageous Sailing School. Now we're very close, in fact, we're right there in front of the Clarkstown Naval Shipyard Park. And what is this? This shipyard, of course, was built back over 200 years ago when the early settlers came to Boston, Massachusetts in their large, majestic sailing ships. And just a couple of docks over is parked the USS Constitution, which was one of the early mighty sailing ships and battleships here in the United States of America. Now, as we look at these docks that allow ships to come in, you'll notice that the level of the water is way down. And that's one thing that's interesting about this part of the world, here in Boston, New England, and up into Canada, is the tide is very extreme. Here we have a 10-foot tide. So there we see the water down, but if we come back here, probably 6-8 hours later, the water will be much higher, right up there, even with the dock. There's the Boston skyline, some of the majestic skyscrapers, a beautiful view of the city. And here, this is a beautiful day, even though it's August, here in the peak heat of the summer. Heat in Boston is not what it is down south. No, we're probably up in the mid-80s, maybe touching 90. But what happens at night, the temperature gets down into the 70s, and the humidity is quite low. So actually, it's very comfortable. And here we go. We're visiting the school. There they're talking about the cruising or sailing courses. Now, you just don't rent a boat here. What happens, in order to be able to rent a sailing boat, you have to have gone through an extensive sailing training course and passed a test. You must be checked out on the boat. And here we see these little sailing boats, and the person that we're sailing with today is an expert. He's been a member of this sailing club and sailing school for 2 years. So he's very experienced. So here we go. We're moving away from the dock. Now, the wind is relatively calm, but it's enough to push the sailboat, and in case of emergency, they equip you with a walkie-talkie. So what happens is, if you're stuck out there in the middle of the harbor and there's absolutely no wind, they will come and get you in a powerboat. But here we go. We're not having a problem today. Now, the wind is gusty and kind of sporadic and not very strong. The waves that you see there around the boat, that's mostly generated by passing motorboats. So, very calm, very smooth. Now we seem to be clipping right along, and we're kind of going with the wind right now. It's going to be a challenge, though, getting back, because we'll have to use that sailing skill to be able to go against the wind and tack back and forth. And here we see one of our neighboring power boats. Here we see fellow sailboats. They're out on the harbor. And of course, Boston's harbor, a natural harbor, is what put Boston on the map. Here we are. We're clipping right along. And the only sense of propulsion that we have here are those sails, except there is an emergency paddle. But I'd sure hate to try and paddle all the way back to that dock. So here we are. We're cruising right along. No problem. There we see the wind is filling that front sail. Now as we go back, we have to zigzag. Can't go directly against the wind. We have to zigzag a little bit. One thing, the design of the sail gets kind of an interesting property where if I have any wind at all, I can almost head directly into the wind using the characteristic shape of the sail. But here we go. Moving right along. One thing, it's very quiet. I don't hear the drone of a motor. There is a little larger sailboat with 2 sails. And here we are, coming back to the dock. Now we're kind of going against the wind, so here we're having to use that curvature of the sail and the tack method to try and maneuver back up to the dock. But here our sailor is an expert, and he seems to be handling it without any problem whatsoever. No paddle today. Now we have a defined parking place that we need to put the boat back. And there are a lot of boats available. There we go. This was quite an experience. Very pleasant day on Boston Harbor. And here we go. The idea is don't fall in. And that concludes our day on the harbor.